We also have MPs from Hanover, from Western Hanover, Heather Miller Bennett, Eastern Hanover. We're also joined position spokesperson for health and wellness, Dr. Alfred Dawes, and later throughout the press conference, Member of Parliament for Northeast St. Elizabeth, Member of Parliament for Northeast St. Elizabeth, Zulika Jest. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very important that we approach the recovery process with bipartisan support, with consensus from a wide range of stakeholders. And we're going to move now to hear from our members of parliament in Westmoreland. We're going to hear from Dr. Dayton Campbell. It was his constituency that can be regarded as ground zero for hurricane. Dr. Campbell.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Senator Cleveland. This morning, I just want to give an update as to where we are in terms of Eastern Westmoreland and what has been done and what we are recommending to be done. So Eastern Westmoreland is where you would find New Hope, which is where landfall was made. And I believe it is the only constituency where the eye of the storm went across all of the constituency as a Category 5 hurricane. It left a trail of devastation and disaster. And we have estimated that approximately 5,000 houses have been totally destroyed. I'm not referring to houses that were damaged. I'm talking about those that are totally destroyed, just rubble remaining. We have countless others that suffered significant damage, moderate damage, and mild damage to the infrastructure. In terms of churches, schools, police station, health centers, all of those were also severely damaged and non-functional in the immediate wake of the hurricane. This, I believe, makes us one of the hardest hit areas. And currently, there is a need for urgent intervention, especially in the area of housing and temporary housing solution for the residents. The response has been inadequate, delayed, and sometimes even inappropriate in my mind. And I say this because one would expect that coming out of a hurricane of this magnitude, that having made landfall in the constituency, that would have seen mobilization of government ministries, departments, and agencies to that area and intervention being made to deal with the issues confronting the people. I want to thank, though, members of the private sector, the private companies, private individuals, non-governmental organizations, including Foundation, Samaritan's Purse, World Central Kitchen, Mercy Chefs. Had it not been for some of these um, groups, I don't know what would have happened to the residents of Eastern Westmoreland, because they have stepped in a big way to ensure that some of the things that are needed have been done thus far. We benefited from a visit of some of the CARICOM leaders, and President Ali out of Guyana committed to doing 200 roofs for some of the affected residents between Bluefields and White House. And in putting together the meeting to that, when the JDF and Ministry of Labour and ODPEM called the meeting, they said they wanted to welcome the two members of parliament in which the government is inserting their political operatives in the response mechanism and bypassing, circumventing the elected officials. I represent all of the constituents of Eastern Westmoreland. I have absolutely no interest in how they voted. This is a humanitarian crisis. It is not a political matter. And as elected officials, we have to be involved and consulted in the process because we know the communities, we know the areas, we know the people. Even in relation to the distribution of aid, to just have the JDF alone going into a committee, into a community, is not sufficient because they won't know the lay of the land, they won't know the residents, and as such, that has left a lot of gaps. So I want to point out specifically some things now. Shelter. The shelters that are in the constituency, they have been inappropriate from the beginning and they continue to be inappropriate. There isn't a bed or a cot or anything in any of the shelters. To be frank, there are persons that are not even aware that some of the shelters are still open with over 20 persons in each one of them. And that means if you're not aware, you couldn't possibly be making any provisions for the residents within those shelters. The persons who are in the shelters are obviously the most vulnerable. They don't have anywhere to stay, they don't have any relatives to stay with, and that's the reason why they're at the shelter. And I realized that the Ministry of Education has also taken on an initiative to reopen schools as soon as possible, which I support because we want to decrease the learning loss. But in moving the persons from these shelters, majority of which are schools, so that school can reopen. Certainly, we can't just move them without making provision for them to stay elsewhere. In terms of emergency evacuation and shelter, housing of these persons, we have not seen any of those things that are supposedly in the country that should be made available. I'm told that it was said in the Senate on Friday that tents went to Dayton Campbell, unless there is another Dayton Campbell that represents somewhere in Jamaica. It's certainly not this one. I have not been made aware of any tents. And I want to be on record as saying I will never support moving out the persons out of the shelter unless we make provision for them. I will block it myself personally. That is inhumane. And we have to do better. So yes, we want the schools to open, but we must make adequate provision before we move the persons out of the shelters. We have, in looking at how we respond to the housing crisis, there are still persons that are on the tarpaulin, still persons that are on a sheet of zinc. You will still see mothers and children just on a sheet of zinc or on a piece of tarpaulin, right? There are still houses without tarpaulin that are yet to be covered. I have so far been told of allocations to the constituency, $3 million for cleaning in the prep work before the hurricane came. And that is after we made advocacy for some allocation because initially we were told that Western Jamaica is not a priority and there was no allocation. Then there was an allocation of $1.5 million that was made twice. So that's another $3 million. That was to get care packages and tarpaulins. Now, if you get a care package and you put $5,000 worth of supplies in it, that would only get you 600 care packages for a constituency with over 40,000 persons. Then there's an allocation of $10 million for housing. And I've said it elsewhere that the Welcome to Montego Bay sign is $17 million. And we are given an allocation of $10 million in a constituency where 5,000 homes were totally destroyed. It is totally insufficient to meet the need that is there. And there is $3 million to RADA, which we have not been able to access as yet. That for a constituency where landfall was made, that has the majority of deaths, that has several persons still in shelters, several persons homeless, 5,000 houses destroyed, it's totally insufficient in terms of governmental response to the crisis that is there. We have been able, through Samaritan's person, I want to give Minister Tufton credit because despite our history of having confrontations in the parliament, he's the only minister of government that has informed me of his visit and involved me in his visit to the constituency. Others have said they're coming, but they have not actually made an attempt to ensure that we can actually um, connect whilst they are within the constituency. Their Starlink seems to malfunction when they are in Eastern Westmoreland. We've been able to set up a field clinic in White House, and GEM Foundation has been able to re-roof the health center in Betheltown, White House, and in Darliston, and thus we're able to offer some medical care. There's still a significant gap, and MP Dawes is here that will speak to some of the health-related concerns, but there's still a significant gap where healthcare is concerned. And even just the disposal of human waste, it can't be that difficult for a country to put some portable toilets in a constituency that has been devastated. So at least we can discard of human waste in a safe and appropriate way. The distribution system that is there is also dysfunctional. We cannot have persons just driving into a constituency and just going randomly into areas without no form of logistics workout. There needs to be a contact point in each division. We are not trying to commandeer what people are bringing. I'm not saying to persons you can take things to your community or to your family. I'm simply saying that we should know so we don't have duplication of the efforts. And what is happening currently is that people are on the main and they receive several times over. Then we have sick, indigent, disabled, those in the more remote parts of the constituency that are not benefiting. You would have seen the exchange in Parliament about the number of care packages distributed. You can't go to a community one time in 20 days when this food package is slated to last for just 3 to 4 days. What is expected of those persons for the additional time? Right? So there needs to be a proper structure that is placed that ensures that relief item can go to those areas. We've proposed the Adopt a Family initiative to give accommodation to some persons using containerized housing. And I want to thank the persons who have contributed to that thus far. And we've been able to deliver 6 units, and we have another 6 that are ordered and ready to be distributed. This is intended to be a temporary solution, the simplest thing in the short term. It is not a proposal for us to have a constituency with pure containerized houses across the of the constituency. We want the situation in Westmoreland in terms of land tenureship to be regularized. We had put a proposal on the table to move the time period to own government land, to move it from 6 years to 25 years. That's something that the government should immediately take on, right? To ensure that we can give the lands to these persons and that they can, some of them can build their own structures that can withstand hurricane. And the government as well should look at low income solutions on government lands for these persons. The aim is not to have boardhouses being rebuilt because that's an invitation for a second disaster. This was with us a few days ago, and he stated that the videos and the pictures don't do justice and that it is total devastation and it's going to take a long time to rebuild the infrastructure. He said they will have to be creative, and he has proposed that we need to get a generator in Darliston and one in White House so that we can at least power the police station, the health centers, and those things. A lot of persons are not cognizant of what is going on out in the western end of the country. Eastern Westmoreland is not what it used to be. The lives of the residents has been severely affected, and it will take a long time for them to return to normalcy. I know people are in a haste to move on, but in your haste to move on, do not forget that you have brothers and sisters that are on the fringes of survival. They are suffering and they need assistance urgently. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. And we're here now from the Member of Parliament for Central Westmoreland, MP Dwayne Vaz.
Good morning, everyone. I want to say a special good morning to my constituents of Central Westmoreland. I'm going to begin by speaking really on housing. And as Dr. Campbell mentioned, each member of parliament was given an allocation of $10 million. What I want to break down to residents is the minimum we're supposed to give each person is 100,000, and that really means that we can only assist a maximum of 100 people in the constituency. And our constituency is the largest when it comes down to registered voters with over 52,000, which actually means we should have over 80,000 people living in the constituency. So we know it's a huge constituency, and assisting 100 people from the government grant is simply inadequate, as you will recognize. The reason we got so much damage in Hurricane Melissa with regards to our housing stock is the same land tenure issue. So because most people don't own the land, they tend to build temporary structures that can be moved if necessary. So most persons are afraid of building permanent structures because if the owner comes for the land, then they will have to leave. A lot of this land is government land, as was said by Dr. Campbell just now. And the government has to use this opportunity to create an environment where people can actually own that piece of land where they can build permanent structures. We think about 10,000 persons or more were affected by Hurricane Melissa. And when I say affected, I mean total destruction plus damage to roofs, major damage I'm talking about. And as I said, this is because of the type of housing that we have in our constituency. And this is something we have to fix in the short and medium term as we move forward. The immediate needs of the constituency as we speak, we have been getting another assistance with regards to food, water, tarpaulins, and stuff like that. But the need has really shifted to housing material because every community we visit now to hand out food packages, people are asking the same question. When will the housing material grants start? When will people start seeing people getting material to fix their structures? So the need that we have now, which I think is the most immediate and short-term need now, is actually to get the materials in so persons can start rebuilding. Some persons have started on their own, family, friends, assisting communities, helping each other, but a lot of people are still there looking at each other, not knowing which angle to turn, not knowing where to do because they really can't afford to start. And these are the people we have to look for. And I know the assessment is going on now, but there are thousands of residents who are just there wondering where the help will come from. And as I said, the government must step in here because it will take the efforts of the government in a significant way for us to get people back on track to the lives they were living before Hurricane Melissa. They we also have a road crisis, and I must add the bridge crisis to it. There's a particular bridge in the Froome area where the road was cut away, and that has compromised the bridge. It's a main road going from Savlamar to Granger, and we have to look into that immediately. Most of the roads were bad before Hurricane Melissa, but they have gotten worse. And it is causing a lot of traffic pileup in some areas because the road is so bad. So we actually need the representatives from the government also to ensure that things are put in place so we can start some immediate works on these particular areas that we have so many issues. We speak also of the shelters that we have now. We still have a few shelters open, and the issue, as was stated by Dr. Campbell, is that leaving the shelters, they really have nowhere to go. So the government needs to put something in place where people know leave the shelters. They might have to set up temporary structures for in the meantime. But something must be done because people cannot leave the shelters without knowing where they're going. They would not be there if they had somewhere else to go. So this is a serious issue that we're facing as we speak. The distribution that we're seeing so far, and I spoke of it in Parliament a couple of weeks ago when helicopter went down in Landale and the members of the government in the area were called on to come because they were on spot before everybody else. I spoke of it, the Prime Minister dismissed what I said, but what I said was repeated twice since he spoke. And the most recent occurrence was this week when at an activist, a known JLP activist premises, that was where the distribution was done. And we have to look at how we're doing these things. I don't know who came up with that idea, who thought this would look like a good idea to have the food packages being distributed from that location, but it was obviously a terrible idea. And we're saying that if you're going to be distributing any package at all, there is a representative in the constituency that you should contact and should assist with the coordination of these things. Whenever we are going out to do distribution, everybody we see in the communities, we give packages. We're not looking at who is PNP or JLP or no P. We're in a crisis situation and the government needs to act in that way. I get the feeling that the government still does not realize that we are in a crisis. But the crisis we're in, we need to understand that people are people. We're Jamaicans and we must treat people as Jamaicans. The gaps before I close between what is needed and what we have gotten. I stated earlier that we have mostly gotten packages with food, water, stuff like that from mostly private donors. The only assistance we have gotten from the government was the $3 million that was mentioned by Dr. Campbell earlier. Every other assistance with regards to food, packages, and water have come from private donors. We have to thank all of these persons who have been coming out. There have been major organizations, like, for example, GEM that was mentioned earlier, but there have been numerous private individuals who have come into the parish. Some of them are from the parish, some are not, but they have lent a helping hand, and the residents of the constituency have been truly appreciative of what has been done so far. So just in closing, I just want to say Central Westmoreland needs the assistance. I know Dr. Campbell said he was the worst hit, but I would beg to differ because Central was equally hit, I think. And if you look at the stretch coming down from White House, after leaving Eastern Westmoreland and Bluefields, the entire stretch coming to Ferris looks the same way. If you turn going to Montego Bay, the entire waterworks looks the same way as White House and Belmont. So it was total devastation in the constituency. And as I said, it's the largest constituency when it comes down to the amount of people, which means that we need special attention. And we're asking everybody who is listening to this press conference that we need as much attention as we can possibly get. So I'm going to say to the residents of the constituency, the whole firm, we will do whatever we can to assist the process. And you can rest assured that your member of parliament will do anything possible to get back on track to where it was before Hurricane Melissa. I thank you.
Thank you. Hear from the Member of Parliament from Western Westmoreland about the devastation in his constituency and the poor response from the government. MP Ian Hales.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition, fellow colleague, members of Parliament. Good afternoon. Good morning. I want to first start off by thanking the charitable organizations that have come on board and have played a role in this hurricane. They have done more than the government. And I'm ashamed to say that I represent a constituency in Westmoreland that we're a part of the government, we're a part of the country. And at the same time, private sector, private individuals, charitable organizations have done more than the government of the land. 1 month, it's almost a month, I think today is a month that we went through the hurricane. 4 weeks from now, it is Christmas. I have over 1,000 homes that have been lost, gone, and probably around 5,000 to 6,000 other cities that the Hurricane Melissa have affected. And I ask myself the question every day as a member of parliament, and I know my colleagues do also, when we get up in the morning. How you going to help all of these 6 to 7, 10,000 Jamaicans that have been affected? And in terms of the assessment that is going on, I called last week, I spoke to an individual, I spoke to the manager, and I asked a question. I said, are there any assessment that is taking place in Western Westmoreland? And the answer is yes, they went to 2 areas. And I said, tell me the 2 areas that you went to. And he listed the 2 areas. And those 2 areas were not the 2 areas that were basically the areas that were damaged beyond recognition. And I see where the assessment now that is taking place is taking place in communities that didn't, that basically supported the Jamaica Labour Party. All I'm saying is we can't do things so ad hoc. We are all in this together, both PNP, JLP, NOMP. We are in this together as a country. And, you know, I want to get back to the assessment though, because the assessment, the assessment leaves a lot of questions. It is said that you have that are volunteering to do the assessment across the constituencies that are damaged. I've asked the question, who are these volunteers? What are the criteria slash requirement for each volunteer? So that even if we can put some individuals, civil society, church, and individuals, put them forward so that they can help in terms of speeding up the assessment. Look, I just think if we don't put back some of these Jamaicans, even give them a roof over their head between now and Christmas, we're going to face some headwinds in this country that we have never faced before. And why do I say that? To every home you go to in the country, people, there's a level of frustration that I've never seen before. People have lost everything. And there's the frustration is, when are we going to get some help? You can't look at me as a member of parliament and say, you know what, pick 100 of your citizens. And when you pick the 100 citizens, um, what about the rest? That going to turn against me as member of parliament? What about those individuals? Because they need help too. How do you go ahead and pick the 100 to give 100,000? For me, I'm doing mine a little different. I'm giving each church one individual within that community that has been severely affected. I don't look at this thing as political PNP, JLP. So the church is going to get involved along with myself in terms of ensuring that we can pick 100 of our citizens. But picking 100 from 9 or 8,000 that have been affected, it's very difficult. You know, in terms of distribution, I've gone through the last couple of weeks disappointed as a Jamaican and as a representative of the people. You see ministers of government come in. You see ministers of government come in, you see government entity comes in. And they go to a particular area that you don't have damage in some of those areas that they go to give out, to distribute food to our citizens. All I'm saying is, look, we have to do better as a country. We have to do better as a government. It can't continue. It can't continue the way it has been going. People in their well, in my constituency, I don't know, since the hurricane, we've been getting a lot of rain. And most of our citizens are without a roof, without tarpaulin, just basically fending on their own. Can't help themselves, can't do nothing. The packages that are going around being distributed. People have gone out, they get one food package, I would say probably around 3, 4 weeks ago, and they haven't gotten any more help from the government. So there's no assessment. Uh, Food package is only 600 per MP. Thank God for the charitable organization. But look, I just want to appeal to the government. I just want to appeal to the government. Come on board with the elected officials. The elections are over. The elections are over. And this crisis allow you to think as a human and not as wear a hat as a political representative. It is that hard. There's a level of hardship that is in Western Jamaica. I just want to say, look, make we ensure that over the next 4 weeks, we can ensure that we put as much Jamaicans back in their home with their roofs. We have to do that as a country. It can't continue, sir. Make we ensure we help some of these individuals, whether PNP or JLP, make we get together, government and opposition, working together in ensuring that we can serve the people of Western Westmoreland and the areas that have been damaged. Make we just stop all this foolishness now. You can't come in my constituency. And when you come in the constituencies, when you leave, you're going to tell me. Or when you reach, you're going to tell me. And then you're going to say, you know what? I'll leave 25 bags of food around the corner for you. It can't continue, sir. And then you go and look for me now. And when I ask you the question, when I ask you the 2 areas that you assess, how you assess those 2 areas? What are the criteria? What are the strategy? And then you turn to me and then you say to me, you know what? We have 2 staff members that live in those areas. Where is the strategy? How we going to deal with all? I don't even think the government know what's going on. It's clear that the government didn't plan for this. They didn't plan for it. And I want every PNP and every JLP, every like-minded Jamaican, where you get in your car every week and you drive down, come a country. I want you to sit down and ask yourself the question, where is the government? What has the government done? I mean, I'm thankful that they said to me I can clean some of my roads, but some of the roads across the other 2 constituencies are not cleared as yet. And how can you say to a foreigner to do more than you as the government here, where the people elect and vote for and put in? And pay taxes. And me have to come here now at a press conference and I beg the government to come on board to play a role with us. The caretaker is not the MP. Nobody elected the caretaker. He's a private citizen. Nobody him or her. But it seems like the election is still going on. Enough is enough, man. It's time this foolishness cut out.
Thank you, MP Hales. We're going to shift the statements to Hanover, and it would appear as if Hanover is left out of the conversation about recovery. It appears as if persons don't know that Hanover was also badly affected, and we're going to hear from the members of Parliament. We're going to start with Western Westmoreland. Um, yes, Western Hanover. We're going to start with MP Heather Miller Bennett.
Good morning, Leader of Opposition, media, colleagues. Good morning. I stand before you this morning not just to tell you about what Hurricane Melissa did, but to tell you how it has affected the lives and livelihood of the people of Western Hanover. It is clear that the government forgot about Hanover. It is clear that their efforts to help Western Hanover has been limited or non-existent. We have over 8,000 families that were affected. And to date, as you've heard, we've gotten $1.5 million prior to hurricane and another 1.5 to assist the residents of Western Hanover. What can that do? That's a drop in the bucket. If it weren't for donors, dog nyam supper in Western Hanover. As an elected representative, it hurts when you have a limited number of package and you have to decide which community you go to next when you have so many communities that are affected. I'm particularly concerned about the assessment process that is being done by the Ministry of Labor. What we're finding happening is that the Ministry of Labor is unable to tell us how many homes they have assessed. They're unable to tell us how many communities they've gone in. What you're finding is that they don't know. They're able to say that Hanover has 4,388 persons that they have assessed. But in my constituency alone, I can tell you we have far exceeded that number. So this patchy way of the assessment is unacceptable. This slow pace way of going about the assessment is not benefiting our residents. So while they take their time in assessing, people are suffering. People are in need. Persons are outside, they're living in their cars. They're living on the streets. They're catching with family members. They're catching with friends. They don't know where else to go. And so this hodgepodge way of assessing, it's not the way to go. And so I'm urging the government to engage agencies that know about data collection, like Statin, they already have the resources, SDC, to assist them in going out to do these assessments. I am particularly concerned as well about our schools. Many of our schools were used as shelters, many still not repaired. We have started back school, and yes, we need children to be in schools and we need them back in schools urgently. But putting them in unsafe environment is not acceptable. Students are back in schools, but we don't see the school bus system back up. And so they're in regular clothing, and so they're being charged adult fares. What is being done? Parents are already without a job and cannot maintain paying adult fares. So what about that school bus system? Why is it that the school bus system is not yet in place despite students are back in school? Many of our students are on path. The schools are without electricity. They're without connectivity. The schools are unable to provide food for these students on path because they can't do storage. What is being done? I urge the government to put in place some kind of food feeding program. What about generators for the school? What about the several generators that I heard were donated? Can't the schools in Western Hanover be given generators to assist them with their refrigerators for storage so that they can provide for their students? While we are giving out these care packages, there's concern about where am I going to live? So yes, you feed me for a week or two. Where are we going to live? No roof, no house. We have gotten an allocation for housing. As my colleague MP stated, who do you decide? How do you decide? I see caretakers coming in. I want to go back to the packages. I see caretakers giving out packages. I see JLP operatives in the constituency giving out packages. I see state ministers coming in, giving out packages. What is lacking is communication and coordination. I urge the government to set up some kind of centralized hub that disseminate information on a regular basis, either through a WhatsApp channel, through regular press briefing. Let us know what exactly is being distributed and to who. As an elected representative, I'm on the ground. I have counselors. They know the space. They know who are the persons being damaged. Utilize them. Utilize us. Utilize the community leaders. We see NGOs, we see JDF, we see caretakers, we see state ministers. We see them coming with packages. We know the space. Talk to us. So we need a communication, we need a coordinated way and not a hodgepodge, patchy way of distribution. These are livelihoods, lives and livelihoods we're playing with. These are families. Many persons may be not directly affected by Hurricane Melissa, but they are affected because they're without jobs. The tourism industry has been basically non-existent. They are without jobs. So I urge the government to put something in place, put some kind of relief support, put some kind of allocation, wage allocation for a short-term period. I urge the government to look into how do we support families, the fisher folks that have lost their livelihood, how do we support them? How about microloans, offering them low interest microloans with some kind of grace period? How do we support them? How do we support our farmers in the short term? What are we doing? They have lost their farms. Western Hanover have quite a few farmers up in the Askinish area, Pell River area, Kendall. They've lost, as far as I know, the assessment has been slow. And so once again, I urge the government to ensure that we measure what we're doing. Because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so I say to the people of Western Hanover, whole strain. I will continue to advocate for you to ensure that the resources get to you. Ministry of Labor asking you to step up, partner with agencies who know what to do. Ask the government and other state ministers coming into the space, communicate and coordinate. Because if we're not doing this together, we're wasting resources. I'm going to ask persons out there, my donors, I want to thank you and ask others to come on board. We are at the phase now where people need homes, they need their roof back on. We have started an initiative, Help Me Fix My Roof. Because despite we know that the structures that we have are not necessarily the ideal, but the people need somewhere where they can live. They need a roof over their heads. And so I ask donors to come on board. The government not doing enough. And they seem like they don't business about Hanover. They have a responsibility to the people of Western Hanover. And I'm asking the government to step up and do what they're supposed to do, while I implore and ask donors to come on board and help me, help the people of Western Hanover to fix their roof. This is not politics. This is humanitarian. People are hurting, their lives and livelihoods have been damaged and lost. I thank you.
Thank you, MP Miller Bennett. We're going to hear from the other member of parliament in Hanover, and she has been advocating relentlessly for her people. I welcome Member of Parliament Andrea Perkis.
Good morning, everyone. Party President Mark Golding, my colleagues, to the viewers. For the people of Eastern Hanover, the date October 28th marked the beginning of a crisis that continues weeks later. Let me be clear about what Hurricane Melissa did to Eastern Hanoverians, because the scale of devastation has been systematically underreported and in many cases completely ignored by the media coverage. Every single board house in Eastern Hanover has been affected, damaged, destroyed. Approximately not 2,000, 5,000 houses are without roofs. Every farm in the constituency suffered severe damage. Half of our health centers sustained significant structural damage. Our schools are so badly affected. This morning, I got a call from the principal of Brownsville Primary, and she asked me who is responsible for the persons in the shelters. Her name is Miss Bucknell. She has started school last week because parents are not able to help the children at home and prepare them for exams that are coming in a few months. And so she rushed to open Brownsville Primary, and I understand. But she's crying out for help because she cannot be the person that is responsible for the persons that are now staying in the shelter. So I'm asking government to pay attention to the schools. All of our schools have been affected. Most of the schools in Eastern Hanover, they have no roof. Residents in Chigwell, Forest, Woodsville, and other areas were trapped for weeks. There is a man-made bridge in Woodsville from 2022. That bridge was partially collapsed. It In 2023, it went down for good. The residents are in dire need of attention from government. That man-made bridge was destroyed again. And so the residents of the Woodsville area, they're asking for urgent, urgent attention. Water supplies were contaminated. I myself was marooned in Cascade. Residents, though, came out and assisted us. And that is a pattern that I've noticed since Hurricane Melissa, that residents have taken it upon themselves to do the work of government because the parish of Hanover has not been included in many things, especially where relief is concerned. The morning after the hurricane, residents assisted me in cleaning 18 miles of roadways so I could get to the main road to coordinate relief efforts. I want to address the government's response or lack thereof. It is true that affected constituency received $10 million. Many of my colleagues have done the math. For housing, it is not adequate. We have a number of houses in Hanover. From my balcony, I am looking at 3 houses that are flat and 5 without roof. The people of Eastern Hanover, they've had to seek comfort living under tarps. That's not good enough. We need help from government. We need ministers to come in and be on the ground as they were before the election. The people of Eastern Hanover, they're demanding your presence. The question I must ask, and the question every Jamaican should be asking, if the allocation on paper is equal, why is help actually reaching our residents so dramatically unequal? Where is the relief going? Why are communities still waiting? Government response has been extremely slow in Eastern Hanover. Corporate Jamaica, though, has stepped up. Companies like Flow, Red Stripe, CM Recycling Company Limited, Trial Hotel, and Billboard King Foundation have provided more immediate, tangible relief than government agencies. Our diaspora family responded with urgency and generosity. And I must thank PNP leadership, former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson, a proud Hanoverian, along with President Mark Golding and MPs Anthony Hilton and Julian Robinson, who have been mobilizing assistance, and some of them have been on the ground providing moral support to our traumatized communities. Eastern Hanover is facing a public health crisis that needs immediate intervention. Western Jamaica has already confirmed 11 cases of leptospirosis since Hurricane Melissa. And that's a deadly waterborne disease. I spoke of waterborne diseases 2 weeks ago in Parliament, still no attention. And on behalf of the citizens of Eastern Hanover, I want to ask the question, what is the purpose of elected representatives going to Parliament and voicing the concerns of the citizens without any notes being taken or any attention being paid to these citizens? There is literally now a mountain of garbage At my personal gate, I live in my constituency. The National Solid Waste Management Authority has failed to maintain consistent collection, and our residents are suffering the consequences. We're deeply concerned about leptospirosis, dengue fever, and other waterborne diseases threatening our people in areas still cut off from proper medical attention. Whether the design is by oversight or the Ministry of Health has omitted the parish of Hanover from its island-wide plugin schedule, I don't know. But believe it or not, Hanover as a parish, we have areas where the water continues to rise. The water has a stench. And up to date, I have not been contacted by anyone from the Ministry of Health to say we are going into these areas to check, to run some tests, to check on the citizens. We have a number of senior citizens in Chigwell, in Forest. These senior citizens have had to travel by means of foot track to get to hospitals, to the 3 out of 10 clinics that we have operating now. Some communities remain isolated. Residents still lack access to potable water. Families are living under tarpaulins or in homes with no roofs. Children are trying to attend schools. I am here today to make our needs absolutely clear. For the most part, Hanover is still technologically marooned. A lot of persons are still not able to get connection. Those Starlinks and generators were given to the government. We did not even receive a single generator to power our constituency office to serve the people that elected us and the entire constituency. We need the Ministry of Health and the local health department to deploy mobile medical units to isolated communities. We also need aggressive vector control measures. We need consistent garbage collection immediately before we face, as I spoke about before, a full-scale disease outbreak. 7 of 10 of the health centers need to be repaired with immediate effect. Our roads need more clearing. Our water systems need restoration. Our schools need immediate structural assessment and repairs so they can serve the essential functions. Our farmers need seeds, and I know there has been an allocation through RADA, but we're asking for more. To the people of Eastern Hanover, I see you. I have walked through your communities. I have witnessed your suffering and your remarkable resilience. You elected me to fight for you, and I will not stop fighting until you receive the help you deserve and the dignity you are owed as a citizen of Jamaica. I want to share stories, and these are not just stories, but things that I've seen with my own eyes. I witnessed the previous Member of Parliament, Dave Brown, driving through my community with the same care packages that the government gave me, only 250 care packages, 5 tarps, and 50 cases of water. To date, that is all that I have received. Now, when a previous member of parliament drives through communities like Paddington, Cocoon, Claremont, Retrieve, Cascade, Hunside, It cannot be 250 care packages that he received. I am asking the government. Government had an opportunity to be great, to look good. After the hurricane, I reached out to JLP caretakers. I left messages for them and I assured them that whatever relief I receive as member of parliament will be shared with them. I did not receive much, unfortunately. Where the assessment is concerned, I sent out a schedule 2 days ago on a community group. It is a very touchy topic, but the government is playing politics. When the Ministry of Labor and Social Security goes to Axandas 2 days, Axandas is a tiny community in Chester Castle Division, and areas like Horton Grove that are 5 times the size of Axandas, still no visits. Tell me there is no politics involved. I want to thank the public sector, the private sector. I want to thank the families from Hanover that are living overseas, the diaspora, for stepping up and helping us. Red Stripe, you came in and you were so amazing. Over 500 care packages. Flo, you came in twice, not once, but 2 times into Chester Castle. Chester Castle is my ground zero in Eastern Hanover. I want to make an appeal to government that the people of Eastern Hanover, they're watching you. The people of Jamaica, they're watching you. The people internationally, people are looking at what you're doing. I am yet to go into some of my strong areas, but I've gone into Pumpkin Bottom, where 80% of the residents voted against me. My mission is one of humanitarian. I cannot be doing politics in such a catastrophic time. And I am asking the government to cut out the PR and get to the people. I have nothing against the Jamaica Defense Force, but I can tell you that I am against the government giving them the care packages to get to our people. I've witnessed myself in Sandy Bay and Hopewell on the main road, 2 trucks dropping off care packages. Our seniors in the lanes are not benefiting. The residents up in Mount Pelion are not benefiting. The residents inland are not benefiting. The people of Eastern Hanover deserve better. Finally, to the people of Eastern Hanover, we're strong. We are resilient. We will get our constituency back together. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Perkis. We are joined by Member of Parliament for Northeast St. Elizabeth, Zalika Jess, and we'll hear from her now.
Good morning. Today I come before you with a very heavy heart. Today I wish I didn't have to speak because I understand that by speaking, I run the risk of being accused of complaining. But I speak because I have a duty to the people of Northeastern St. Elizabeth who elected me to be their voice and to be their compass. My issues today are multiple, but I will give you the abridged version. And I'll start with the long-standing practice, which has really merged into a convention whereby ministers or officials of the government ought properly to notify a sitting member of parliament before entering that MP's constituency to do any government-related issue. Now, that is not just a matter of parliamentary etiquette or constituency etiquette. It has its rationale in ensuring that as the duly elected representative of the people, you can be informed as to what is taking place in your constituency, so that by extension, you can inform the people, so that you can make yourself available when the government officials are present to continue to represent and advocate on behalf of your residents and your constituents on issues that concern them most, issues that you might not have an opportunity in the parliament to raise because of the rules of the parliament. In a time like this, a very sensitive time when the most vulnerable are most at risk, we expect that that practice would ensure that there is collaboration between the government officials and the elected representatives to ensure that persons can benefit. In my constituency, I have had to sit and watch as persons approach me the day before a visit to ask me if I heard that the Minister of Local Government is coming into the constituency. What is it that they're coming to do? Where can they meet them? And I have no answer to the questions because I was not notified in advance. In my constituency, first, the Speaker of the House came, and perhaps she came in her capacity as an individual outside of the politics, but by her utterances, she made statements to suggest that she had visited communities, and every community that she visited, residents were not hopeful that they would get any assistance from me as the Member of Parliament. And I thought it was very unfortunate that in a time like this, we would seek to sow seeds of division and discord, because the Speaker of the House visited 3 communities, all strongholds of the Jamaica Labour Party. Not one PNP community was visited, not one PNP community was given any of the care packages. In fact, the areas visited are well known: Rocky Hill, Santa Cruz, Burns, which is regarded by Edward Seaga as Little Tivoli. No reference was made to any other communities, but the speaker formed the conclusion that every community she visited were not hopeful that they would get help to build back houses or do repairs. And I speak on that because she came into the community on Saturday morning, and by Saturday afternoon, the Minister of Local Government also visited the constituency. He distributed care packages, 60 to the sitting Jamaica Labour Party councillor, but I was not informed of his visit prior. The 3 other councillors who happened to be PNP councillors were also not informed of the Minister of Local Government's visit. And of course, they got no packages from the minister. Only the JLP council received packages. And finally, the Minister of Justice came on Friday. And my constituency office happened to be right next door to the venue that he visited. I was not notified in advance. No, it doesn't matter. I see the statement from the minister, and labeling a statement as being contained or filled with lies or accusing me of lying does not make it untrue, and it does not change the facts. The facts remain, as I stated in my earlier video, that the minister came into the constituency without prior notice. The minister came into the constituency, handed out or distributed supplies. It doesn't matter if it was 7 or 77. The parliamentary practice, the convention still remains. It is improper to visit an MP's constituency without prior notice. That is a practice that has long been observed. And if it is that the government is now departing from that practice, then we need to know why. Because we're striving towards good governance. In England, they have codified that almost, in a sense, by having ministers' code, which set that out, that ministers of government must notify and not just give just passing notice on the day, but proper notice. perhaps it is time for us to implement that here in Jamaica. Secondly, I speak on the issue of housing because the speaker made mention that persons that she spoke with in the communities, the JLP communities that she visited, were not hopeful that they would get assistance. Like many of these members of parliament, I also received only $10 million as an allocation for housing repair. On the very first day that my constituency office reopened after the hurricane, we had over 600 persons in attendance at the office asking for housing assistance. Over 600. And when I went into communities like Mosquito Bottom in Windsor, they didn't even know that there was a deadline given by the government to report on matters such as those. So their information was never captured. I raise it to say to you that the government, you've heard, has given a directive that they are recommending that you give 100,000 to each beneficiary. I have not been able to do so. I have taken the decision that I cannot choose who should benefit and who should not. I cannot choose who should get help to put on back their roofs and who should not when everybody needs help to put on back their roofs. And so every one of those 600 and odd persons who applied for housing assistance, I've submitted their names. And so it means that they're not going to get 100,000 each. It means that some of them going to get $12,000, which is only probably 3 sheets of zinc. But what do we do when the funding is not sufficient? And let me make it clear. I have PNP people who voted for me. I have JLP people who voted for me. I may have people who never support the politics before and them go vote. So I don't care who people vote for. When I go into a community to distribute supplies or to assist people, I have never asked them who they voted for. Once I have it, I'm going to share it, even though it means sometimes getting quarrels from your own supporters who feel as though you're helping the other side more than how you're helping them. And I say this to say that we do not support the practice of division. We do not support the practice of undermining duly elected representatives whose only intent is to provide help for people who are suffering. We see people who are in need. We don't see JLP and we don't see PNP. We see people who are vulnerable and who are depending on the government to make the right decisions so that their lives can be better. And that's the only objective that we have over here on the People's National Party side. Now, finally, I speak to the issue of infrastructure. The constituency that I represent suffered not just physical loss of the houses or road work was completely destroyed in areas, particularly in Santa Cruz, where it seems as if a bomb was dropped overnight. We have holes in the roadways which were over 20 feet deep. Now, I've tried my best to assist, but these are all temporary gaps, temporary stop gaps by using the debris that had been washed away to try and fill back the holes so that people can't say that they are marooned. But what is the plan going forward? Because one more show of rain and all of that wash away, and people again going to be marooned. The people in Abraham, who even though we tried to fix the road and did the best that we could, they tell me that when rain fall, they still have to walk to get home up in the hills because the cars still can't manage because it's mud and dirt that was used. So it has slipped away and is slipping away. What is the plan? Are we going to wait until something disastrous happens before we put in place plans and solutions that will actually inure to the benefit of people? In Santa Cruz, we have a situation where all of the mud, all of the debris from the hills washed down into the town of Santa Cruz. So it is not uncommon for you to see people wearing dust masks when you visit Santa Cruz. What is the plan? The government has started to clear the roadway in Santa Cruz without any notification to me as the member of parliament. And now we are left with a situation where I don't know if there is funding that is left, but the road needs a water truck to actually wash away all of that mud, all of that debris. What is the plan for Santa Cruz? What is the plan for the areas in Thornton? Thornton has over 1,500, almost 2,000 persons, and 95% of Thornton lost roofs. Some houses have completely crumbled. What is the plan? Because my $10 million done And I still don't know how we're going to help the rest of the residents in Windsor and the other areas, even in Brace River, that got flooded out and who go around and pick up 2 sheets of zinc and nail it on or tack it back on. But them know so the next shower of rain, them are going to wet up again and another strong gust of wind, it are going to blow off again. What is the plan? I close by saying that I have absolutely no intention to be cantankerous. And if I appear to be somewhat passionate, forgive me. But when you represent people who see you as their only hope, who come to you because they have nobody else to turn to, we have a duty to speak on their behalf, and we have a duty to hope that the government listens and the government acts. Thank you.
Thank you, Member of Parliament. Uh, it would appear as if we're on the cusp of a health crisis. And what we have recognized is that there is a suboptimal response from the government in this regard. We're going to have our opposition spokesperson for health and wellness, MP Alfred Dawes, to address the matter.
Thank you, Senator. Leader of the opposition, my colleague, members of parliament, journalists here, those who are tuning in, good morning. I also wish to greet those who are tuning in merely with the disgraceful intention of trying to distort what we say and to edit clips to present a false narrative to suit their own agenda. I greet those who have spent their lives playing politics to stop playing politics with people's lives. Today, I give you an update, having met with the technical team at the Ministry of Health, the minister himself, and being on the ground, conducting missions, meeting with persons who are actively involved in trying to improve and assess the health situation in the most badly affected Western parishes. We must give what is due to Caesar. The Ministry of Health has, in fact, done quite a bit, as Dr. Campbell had said earlier, in terms of being responsive to deploying some of the clinics and the restoration of services at some clinics and the improvement of the infrastructure of some hospitals, such as Cornwall Regional Hospital, having now had a roof replaced by Médecins Sans Frontières or Doctors Without Borders. We, however, are very concerned about whether or not public health care is getting the attention it deserves. We have to understand that the crisis that is unfolding now out west, it is not merely the realm of the Ministry of Health and the technocrats, doctors, nurses, and vector control workers, public health inspectors. It is not under their control. What is happening is that it is a multidisciplinary, multifaceted approach that is needed to stave off the impending crisis. We are already in the midst of a leptospirosis outbreak, and we could have seen this coming. We ought to focus not only on trying to send out information to say avoid streams and water, avoid uh, rodents, but we ought to look at how we can address the environmental factors that are causing this outbreak. Garbage collection is an issue. It is piling up not just out west, but across the island. Even in my constituency, that was largely spared from the brunt of the hurricane. Water is an issue. We heard from the MPs that water is rising in some areas. There is a stench of dead animals, and you cannot simply say to people, avoid contaminated water, when that is the only water that they have available. So we have to look at the cleanup, we have to look at the access, and it is this multimodal approach that we're going to have in tandem with the work of the Ministry of Health that is going to stave off a worsening of the leptospirosis outbreak, as well as try to mitigate, if not completely avoid, the threat of dengue and chickpea. When we speak about leptospirosis being an issue, it is a disease that is largely mild, but when it gets bad, it gets bad. And it can lead to death because of liver failure, bleeding out, renal failure, and therefore early diagnosis and treatment is essential. Questioning the capacity of the Ministry of Health to adequately confirm cases of leptospirosis. Do we have the capacity locally to test for leptospirosis? What thoughts are being given to deploying rapid kits into affected areas where we can test for the antibodies that are elevated when you have an acute infection? Early testing helped in COVID, and anyone with a passing knowledge of medicine understands that the earlier you intervene in a disease, the better the outcome, as well as the less likelihood you will have long-term complications. So we need to be testing. To say that we have 11 cases of leptospirosis begs questions. Are we testing enough? Are we missing cases? And if we are faced with a national outbreak, can we ramp up testing to have results back to see whether or not the case that we're dealing with in front of us as a physician is really leptospirosis or not? So we need that information from the Ministry of Health. And what are they saying about the use of rapid kits that can be made available at clinics and even with partnerships with private doctors, as well as distribution through volunteers who are going into the communities conducting medical missions. There are still critical shortages of basic medical supplies, manpower, and of course, functioning equipment, some of which would have been damaged during the passage of the hurricane. We know that there are patients who have lost medication because they do not have a fridge that is working, because they do not have a generator. And therefore, you have to be concerned about non-compliance as a result of these socioeconomic factors that are now more than ever playing a role in healthcare. We have gotten some complaints about the process to facilitate missions. There seems to be a lack of coordination on the ground, even if persons are fully registered and they have been listed as partners. They still face some obstacles, whether or not the team on the ground were expecting them, and who are they partnering with to mobilize the people in the community. In many instances, if the members of parliament are not a part of the mission initially, they do not have the wherewithal to rapidly get out persons and mobilize them to take advantage of the free medical services. So again, this is an echo for partnership and not just trying to have hegemony over the relief efforts. And this includes the medical missions. Now, when we speak about the way forward, because this is not going, the situation that exists on the ground is not going away anytime soon. There are too many people who are homeless. There are too many people who are marginally living on the fringes of survival. And as a result of that, the conditions that exist for leptospirosis to continue and for dengue and chickpea to have outbreaks here. We're only 90 miles away from Cuba, and they have more people with leptospirosis, sorry, with dengue and chickpea than there are people living in Jamaica, over 3 million. The conditions exist and they will continue to exist for a while. So we have to plan accordingly. We cannot wait until we see a spike in cases and then we have a knee-jerk reaction. We must be able to anticipate that there will be an outbreak, there will be a spike, certain communities will be affected more likely than others, and we try to stave it off and put in mitigating measures. I don't believe relying on PAHO. Cuba is is dealing with their own epidemics right now. They have best practices that, because of the relationship that we have had with Cuba for quite some time, they're willing to share with us. Let us call on the Cubans for help. They have a very good system where they look at the environmental factors. Is there a lot of garbage? Is there a lot of stagnant water? Is there increased rainfall in the area? All of which we know has been described happening out west. You look at these environmental factors, you look at the behavior of the people. Are they bathing in the rivers? Are they using exposed to contaminated water? You look at their access. Do they have access to healthcare, access to public education, to resources? If they get sick, they can report in or go to a hospital. And of course, you have to look at the history of the area. There are some places in Westmoreland that have a history of typhoid. Now, when you factor in all of these determinants that contribute towards an outbreak, you go in, you engage community leaders, you launch public education campaigns, you clean up the place, sanitize, ensure that you have adequate garbage collection, ensure that you have potable water, you treat breeding sites, you do fogging, get rid of the vectors, and then you may reach a point where you do not have a spike in cases. And that is real primary prevention. That is the basis of public health, which has been proven to work over 100 years now. So maybe 200 years from the cholera epidemic in England. So we want to entreaty those who are in charge of the disaster recovery to employ early warning systems for healthcare now, not just surveillance to say that you have spikes, but predicting the likely locations of outbreaks and intervening. And to do that, you must combine environmental data, behavioral patterns, historical um, outbreaks, and you must also ramp up testing capabilities, confirmation testing, as well as introducing rapid testing. And with that, we can have early intervention, the simple penicillin that can save lives in the case of leptospirosis, or the treatment of renal failure with fluids early out. Dengue, you identify when it has become the hemorrhagic fever where you're bleeding out and have early intervention as well. And we must have a mechanism where you have real-time reporting of fever. If you have a fever, there must be a way for you to report that you have it so that you can get tested. Vector control has to be augmented by private contractors, bringing in back the part-time workers, but the schedule for vector control cannot be such that communities, such as mine in Southeast St. Catherine, basically have fogging once every 2 weeks at best, and we have 18 communities, and we are plagued with mosquitoes in Portmore. So we have to ramp up vector control immediately, and because garbage pileup leads to rodent infestation, we have to ensure that garbage is being collected across the island in a timely manner. For communities where you cannot effectively solve the issue, especially if there's rising groundwater, evacuate the residents. Get them out of the conditions that are going to lead to respiratory illnesses, waterborne diseases, as well as those that are vector-borne. And of course, you have to, and this is echoing the call of all my colleagues, do not try to do it alone. Engage both sides of the political divide. Engage community-based organizations, the church, community leaders, get everybody on board to identify the most vulnerable, to pinpoint the areas where you have to have a heightened presence. And this is the only way we can have an effective response. We may have to consider looking at the distribution of mosquito nets and repellents to avoid persons who are living outdoors and in shelters getting bitten by mosquitoes. And of course, the Ministry of Health has to anticipate that if all of these measures fail, what we're going to have a surge in patients coming into the hospitals. What is the surge plan in terms of bed capacity, in terms of staffing, testing, and treatment? We have to have a preparation, a plan in place for the worst case scenario. And then, of course, rehabilitation, especially when it comes to CHICV, is important for long-term productivity and pain control. And in all of this, I left this for last, mental health. People are numb now. They are not feeling and processing what is happening. You cannot have a psychologist or a mental health team going out and tell them better must come and then send them back to their tarpaulins to live. We must have coupled with mental health checks and interventions, hope for the people that their conditions will be improved in very short order, and we're not forgetting about them when the news teams have left and they are on their own, and we're looking at this situation as a 9-day wonder. We must have interventions coupled with the psychological effects, psychiatrists getting involved. All of this must be complemented by improvement, tangible improvement in their lives, so you give the people hope. This is where I leave it. This is what is happening on the ground. This is what we must prepare for. And if we don't prepare for it, we can have the expectations that we will pay for it in lives. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Dawes. I'm going to invite the leader of the opposition to close out the presentations in this morning's press conference.
Still morning. Good morning, everyone, members of the media, listeners, my colleagues who are here. We wanted to have this press conference this morning. It's the second press conference we've had since the hurricane hit Jamaica. First one was about a week after the hurricane hit. We're now about 4 weeks since that date, 3 weeks since the press conference. And I wanted to have the elected representatives of the people in the constituencies that have been extremely badly affected to have the chance. I wanted to give them a chance to describe to the media and the public what they are experiencing and the deficiencies in the response, the gaps that need to be filled, and the decisions that need to be taken. This is not to be anything other than responsible representatives of the people to bring to the attention of the authorities and the public what needs to be done to make the overall response more effective. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of people whose lives have been turned upside down by this cataclysmic event. And the effects of that event are ongoing. We talk about phases and initial response morphing into recovery and other phases. But the truth is that because of the very ad hoc arrangements that have been put in place thus far, the level of normalcy and stability that have returned to the lives of people in the badly affected areas is very erratic. Some people have received relief because of good fortune, happen to be living in close to the major arterial roads, or they have had the benefit of interventions from international and local NGOs and disaster relief organizations. But many, many others have had little or no interventions. And so the situation is not an even one. And there are far too many people still who are suffering from the initial effects of the hurricane. The opposition, as I said at the first press conference, and I want to repeat it now, we must not seek to score political points as a competitor of the government. This is not the time for that. We've just gone through a general election barely 2 months ago. This is a time when Jamaica's facing a huge disaster, an economic disaster, a social disaster, a humanitarian disaster. And the role of the opposition at a time like this is to help the government to respond as effectively as possible, because we want Jamaica to get back on its feet. We represent people who need that to happen. So when you see us perhaps disagreeing with the government on a particular issue, it is not as a result of being cantankerous or being trivial or petty. We take issue with those things that we think are fundamental and that we should not allow to be implemented in the originally proposed way, because it will have a deleterious effect. It will have an effect on the governance of the country or on the response to the disaster, which is suboptimal and needs to be improved. And that is how we have been attempting to approach this. Equity, transparency, and accountability are vital in the response to a disaster. We have heard numerous reports that political representatives of the governing party are being used to distribute government relief, taxpayer funded or donor funded through the government relief in ways which they have no legal or political standing constitutionally to play that role. Elected representatives must be included in things that are happening in their constituency so that they have information, so that their information can be shared with those who are operating on the ground, and you can work together with all stakeholders, including those who are representing the other side of the political fence, to get the best possible solution in a difficult situation. That is not happening. I have been bringing these incidents, as I hear of them, I have been bringing them to the attention of the Prime Minister through WhatsApp. He has not responded to me at all since last week, the Saturday before last, 10 days ago. I have not heard from him in response to any of my messages. So when the Minister of Information says that we have been communicating constantly, that is simply untrue. There has been a total cessation of any communication, certainly in my direction, from the Prime Minister. I note that there's a decision that has been taken to enact legislation to establish a new reconstruction agency, the acronym NARA, National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, I believe, which will have wide powers to ensure that decisions can be taken very quickly when it comes to rebuilding, for example. I know that this is something that the private sector have been agitating for, and I see the need for it. But where you are circumventing normal procedures because the circumstances that we're in require that, it is all the more important that the thing be done in a transparent manner and that all critical stakeholders should be at the table when those decisions are being taken or being reviewed. The Prime Minister, in making that announcement, spoke of a broad-based governance structure for this new authority. I had called for something of that nature right after the hurricane. I wrote to him about it. However, I noticed that he, at his press conference when he announced it, he made no mention of the opposition being at the table. I don't know whether that omission was inadvertent or deliberate, but I can tell you that if we want Jamaica to get back on her feet as quickly as possible, if we want to avoid social dislocation, and if we want people to feel that the response is equitable, is well designed, and is without political bias, it is important that critical stakeholders be at the table. And the opposition, with 28 seats in the parliament, and almost the same number of votes in the last election as the government should be part of that process. We are willing to serve, but we are currently being excluded. All of the committees that have been established under the cabinet, including the private sector committees and so on, the opposition is not present on any of those committees. The one concern I have as well is in the way in which the post-Melissa response effort is being administered. Jamaica has a robust legal framework for responding to disasters. The National Emergency Response legislation called the Disaster Risk Management Act, which we passed in 2015 and which the government used extensively during the pandemic. Despite the Constitution having provisions for states of national disaster to be declared, and there's a constitutional framework for addressing it, the government preferred to use the disaster risk legislation to respond to the pandemic. What we have seen in relation to this disaster is that it is effectively being marginalized, partly because ODPEM, which is a critical institution within that legislative framework, has been denuded of authority, status, and capacity over the last decade. And this is unfortunate because the legal framework which exists in Jamaica is well designed in accordance with international standards. And it contemplates responses being at the national level, at the parish level, through the municipal corporations, which used to be called parish councils, and at the community level. They're all supposed to be integrated so information can feed its way from the ground up seamlessly to the National Emergency Committee, NEOC, the National Emergency Operations Center, and decisions can be made on the basis of complete information or the best possible information, and then directed and resourced through that structure so that the ground gets the benefit of being comprehensively included in whatever the relief is. What we have seen is that structure is not functioning. The parish councils have not been engaged and resourced so that they can play their part, despite them having disaster professionals and other professionals available to them to play the role they're supposed to play. And instead, we're seeing parallel structures being put in place, which are essentially running alongside the legal structure that exists, and have in many cases superseded them, but without proper coordination. Those parallel structures are those set up by cabinet, and also those involving our international partners, the NGOs and others, without whom we'd have been in an even worse situation than we are now. We're grateful to all of the agencies that have been here putting a lot of effort, but the coordination needs to be sorted out. And the legal structure that exists to ensure that relief is distributed fairly, equitably, and comprehensively based on the best possible information on the ground, that needs to be activated properly and not circumvented. I close by reiterating that we have value to bring to the table in the response to this disaster. We have representatives at the local government level. We actually have more representatives at the local government level marginally than the government do. We have a substantial number of representatives at the parliamentary level. They are all on the ground getting information daily from residents as to what is happening. The political organizations of both parties go into every nook and cranny of the country, and therefore the organizations are well placed to get information to feed into the disaster response system. That is not being leveraged. That is an asset that the country has, and which the disaster legal framework contemplates being engaged, but is not being engaged and is being marginalized. And that is why we're having suboptimal results where people are still a month after the disaster feeling abandoned by the government because they haven't seen anything happening to take them out of their plight. The housing situation, we've heard the announcement about the 5,000 container homes that will be brought in and distributed through the NHT. That is not likely to come into effect based on what the Prime Minister himself said until the second month of next year. In the interim, what is the solution for the people who have no shelter? The thousands of Jamaicans who are coming into the Christmas period, every time it rains, them wet up. Their children, old people, pregnant mothers, persons with disabilities. What is going to happen to them? I said at the last press conference, in response to a question from the media, off the cuff, I was asked what did I think would be an appropriate figure to empower the constituencies. I'd said 50 million. Certainly, a $50 million allocation would allow MPs to respond to the huge need in a more meaningful way. Instead, they've been put in this invidious situation where essentially they're asked to allocate to 100 people when the needs of their constituents are thousands of people. And that simply is just a recipe for a lot of frustration and bitterness. The government needs to wheel and come again with this and rapidly put in place a response on the ground to the shelter needs. It is an opportunity also to run some income on the ground where people have lost their jobs or their businesses have been closed and get the economy moving. We could have mobilized brigades of people who need income to help with the cleanup, which is now very sporadic and needs to be dealt with the public health risks that Dr. Dawson has spoken to again, and also with the shelter issues. Let us mobilize people on the ground, have some money flowing through those communities, get the economy back at the grassroots level so that people can have some hope and so that the needs of the people are being addressed in a efficient and quick way. We will play our part if we are allowed to do so, but we bemoan the misinformation being fed about the role we're playing. We are feeling very excluded from all decision making, and the way in which the system of relief is operating on the ground is not in accordance with established norms and is also resulting in suboptimal distribution of relief because the relief is not being done on the basis of proper information as to the needs. So that is why we will be having regular press conferences going forward, because we're now at a time when the country needs to change gear in a forward direction, and we feel that the government needs to be guided by persons who are in the feeling it on the ground, the neglect and so on. And it's our role, I think, to do that. The Parliament doesn't lend itself, as currently managed, to having that kind of open dialogue, that opportunity to share what we have to say. So we will have to do it in this manner and other manners. So I thank the media for having given us this time, and we look forward to partnering with you as we play our part in getting Jamaica back on her feet. God bless Jamaica, land we love. One Jamaica, unity is a must. Let us pull together and rebuild our country. Thank you.
Thank you, leader, and thank you again to all our speakers who presented. We'll provide the opportunity for members of the media to raise questions. So please identify yourself and the individual to whom you are putting the question. So, yeah, journalists from Nationwide.
Good morning, everyone. Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News. Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News here. My first question to the is a bit of the opposition. Question to the opposition leader in terms of the the allocations that are being given to the members of parliament in order for them to rebuild. We're hearing in terms of the housing that the 10 million isn't enough based on how many people in the constituency are affected. I know that there was a suggestion earlier in terms of a fixed figure. You said it was off the cuff as 50 million. But in terms of given the different characteristics of the constituencies and the different amount of persons affected, do you think a fixed figure would be more
No,
relevant or would it be based on the constituency?
I don't think in this situation it's sensible or realistic to have a one size fits all basis for allocation. Um, all constituencies have some needs because the hurricane did have impact on everywhere, but the degree is on a huge differential curve. And clearly, those constituencies, which we know from the mapping that's been done and the data that we have, where the extensive damage is, should get realistic allocations in keeping with the extent of the damage and loss that they have suffered. And every MP, I think, would accept that that's fair and reasonable. And so when I throw out a number, I'm not suggesting that every constituency must get the same thing. But I do think that those that are suffering the most, and every MP who has spoken here is in a constituency where there is extensive loss and damage and dislocation. They need to be adequately resourced and included in the process so that the people can feel that the state is responding in a serious way, in an efficient way, and in a fair and equitable way to the disaster that has befallen their lives.
Right. So in light of that, would you think it would be fair if the MPs would do their assessment and determine a figure based off of the damage that they have seen on the ground?
I think that we don't need to go through a scientific survey of the damage in advance of providing relief. It is well known the extent of damage that there is. It's easy to have a preliminary figure, which you know is not going to be the end number that's needed, but is a decent start and get going with that. A month has passed. Children need to get back in school, but people are still living in shelters in schools that are badly damaged. Teachers and the Ministry of Education want those people to leave. Nothing is put in place for them to go to. And now the MPs are being told, we must deal with it, but no resources are being provided. So it's a crazy situation. And it requires a proper, well thought out response with everybody at the table who has value to bring to that decision. And that's what's lacking now.
My next question would be to Miss Perkis. I did do a story a few weeks back on the issue of the rising water in Chigwell, Forest, and Leith. I think those are the three counties you had mentioned. In terms of since then, what can you say about the level of water that's in those communities and how are the constituents that live there? How are they doing right now?
All right, firstly, let me clarify that Lethe was not one of those areas marooned by water. Chigwell, the water continues to rise. Water is receding in Forest, but it's going over to Chigwell. So it continues to rise in the Chigwell area.
Okay. And I guess this would be a question for all the MPs in general, but in terms of resources, specifically water, Dr. Dawes had spoken about the fact that contaminated water is an issue and people need potable, clean water in order to respond to the disaster. What can you say is the status of the restoration of water in your constituency? This is for all the MPs.
Well, our main booster systems have been damaged, mainly Great River. That has been repaired so far, but we do have booster systems in different areas that are still damaged. And I will use this opportunity to ask NWC to go in and pay some attention to those areas. We have a number of rivers in Eastern Hanover. Persons are drinking water from the springs. I don't believe it is safe. I have warned against it. But when we have officials going into the communities that are vulnerable, the experts, and asking them same, I believe it is more effective than just a member of parliament saying, don't consume the river water, don't consume the spring water.
I just want to add to what Member Perkis said a while ago in terms of water. Yeah. Um, yes. In the majority of these constituencies that are affected by Hurricane Melissa, The system is served by the Jamaica Public Service Company, JPS, and the majority of those systems are still out as we speak. The government speak to deploying generators across the country in these areas. There's still a lot of areas that are without these generators as we speak. So in terms of the water infrastructure, because out of the 227 system we have across the country, they're all independent. There's no linkages. So therefore, the majority of these stations act independently, operate independently. So there's no synergy between, as we speak now, I know that the JPS is trying to repair a lot of these stations along with hospitals and fire station and other entities. But as far as water goes, because of the electricity from the JPS, a lot of these areas are still, in a lot of these plants across the country, across the different constituencies are still out as we speak. So individuals have they're going to rivers, streams, which the water is unsafe as we speak.
And has water been trucked in terms of the places
Well,
that
the
don't have running
government
water?
provided $2 million to each MP to truck water, but here again, I want to add and say that an average cost for a truckload of water is anywhere between 40,000 and 60,000. So if you look at it, that can only do basically in a constituency, you can basically truck anywhere between 30 and 40 loads of water, and that's what you're supposed to be trucking daily. So the $2 million roughly is a drop in the bucket as we speak.
Okay.
Could also just add that in some of the badly hit areas, the containers that people use to store water have been badly damaged. Black tanks have been destroyed and so on. So even when you are trucking water, there's a problem as to what you do with it. That needs to be considered in responding to the water crisis.
I just want to add that the Logwood treatment plant suffered damage, right, during shortly after Melissa. Power has been restored. The generator there was damaged. I want to urge the government to ensure that this process to procure the generator starts immediately, despite JPS has restored power to the plant. This plant feeds majority of Hanover and parts of Westmoreland. And so it is important that there is a generator there. I know there was generator was rented during the time until power was restored only recently. But as you know, there are times when the JPS will go down. And as such, it is important that we start the process of procuring a generator for that plant.
Right. Thank you. If we have, do we have any other question online? All right, thank you so much. I want to specially thank you.
Online,
We have a question online.
online.
Okay.
Yes, I'm